All right, say hi as you roll in. We're doing the Creative Cycle webinar. This is my awesome longtime friend, fellow gringa living in Colombia, Sierra, right here with me today.
Hi,
And so,
neighbor.
Sierra, I want you to introduce yourself. You have taught me, we've gone back and forth, and we were even just talking about it now. These cycles, I didn't know as much about the lunar cycle until we started collaborating on this project. And so,
Yep.
yeah, basically, I am just going to drain all the wisdom I can get out of you and share it
Take
with
it.
all my people. And
Take it.
so, first, introduce yourself. You have Red Thread Publishing coming
Yes.
up. Put all of this in context
All
for
right.
us, please.
So I am, and I do this all the time. I like when how we introduce ourselves changes, should change every moment because we are changing. But for the context of this conversation, I am the founder of Red Thread Publishing, a female publishing operation, and the founder of Integral Women. These two organizations are part one and one part, and they're the same. Uh, because it's all about women's empowerment and really supporting women through the act of writing and publishing and to tell our stories. I've been doing this work energetically internally with women for a long time, and the publishing and the writing element was the missing piece. I had been doing it for myself, but was definitely the missing piece. And so now supporting women to write and tell and publish their stories to accelerate their personal growth, their professional growth, and to amplify their message and impact in the world. And it gets me so excited that I'm just thrilled to be here. So thanks for letting me to the
Awesome.
party.
And we have people coming into.
Yay.
So I'm so thrilled about what you're doing. As I said, Sierra and I have met because we both live in Bogota, Colombia. And so yes, she has been such a great teacher for me, collaborating around the creative cycle. And so you have this new program starting up, and I just want to go through it
Yeah,
one
let's dive
step at
in.
a time and hear all about this. So I
Yeah,
know that's what we're here to really learn about. So let's get started.
great.
So in the information you've given me, there are basically four parts to the creative cycle. The
Yep.
first one is going inward, dreaming. Can you tell us both about how does this look physically? How does it
Mm-hmm.
feel? And then
Yeah.
how can we optimize it and use it so we're not
Yeah.
beating ourselves up because we're not constantly like energizer bunnies going, going, going.
So many important points there. Before we dive into the first phase, I just want to give the context, right? So there's four phases, and the reason there's four phases is because they're in everything. They're in the moon phases, they're in our menstrual phases, they're in the seasons. Okay, they are in all parts of the creative process, um, and so it's not happenstance. And the reason this creative process works so well, when we can see it and play within it, we're no longer fighting against what's an internal, physical, often hormonal, energetic experience and an external, the moon energy and the seasons and everything. There's all this stuff playing out within us and through us. And so when we can see that and use that, harness that energy, it makes, like you said in some of your earlier posts, it makes the writing process easier, more fun. Quite often, the actual result is more delicious,
Better and more
because,
profound.
yeah, because you weren't. Before I really cued into this, I thought of my creative process more like a mechanistic. And I used to teach this same process to my students when I was a high school teacher of like, you just got to crank it out. You've got so many days, so break it into so many pieces and just show up the same way every day and just be a machine. And in reflecting on that, I realized that I was teaching my students, but especially my female students, to fail. That if they couldn't show up the same way every day, then they'd already failed before it even came time to take the test or create the thing. And so we were operating, I was teaching this process of failure, and I'm not playing that game anymore because women, especially, have rises and like collapses of energy, flows and fluxes. And when we can tune into that and rest when we're supposed to rest and shine like a, can I swear? Like I
Yes,
get a
go
little,
for it.
okay, shine like a motherfucker when it's your time to shine for a couple of days. You can be so productive and so engaged and so much more in a few days if you've rested before and have sort of playing the game as it's supposed to play out instead of trying to be one thing all the time. And like you said, half of your energy goes to beating yourself up that you didn't do it that way instead of like, oh, I wasn't supposed to, and now I can be even more amazing. So that's the context.
And actually, and I'm gonna riff because I always riff off
Too.
of you. And so now let's introduce subtitle New Moon, because one thing that I think is so important at the beginning of this, you talked about how it allows us to go deeper and make something better if we honor each part of the cycle for what it is. And I know that so many of us beat ourselves up, probably mostly because we're not constantly extremely productive. And so with the new moon, what I'm really excited to learn about how to utilize this, and your cycles might not necessarily go exactly with the moon or go exactly with your menstrual cycle or whatever, but we're all constantly going through these cycles. And so just thinking of ripping people off of this new moon, stealing this new moon phase with them, this is kind of like the phase where you download the full vision. And so I think we've all had those projects where we're like, okay, this is the idea, let's go, let's put this out, here, I had the idea to make a flower, let's make a flower, and then run with it. And if you don't fully visualize what it's going to be, if you don't go deep into this, enjoying and kind of frothing and marinating in this new moon phase, it's not going to come to full fruition. This is so important. This is the seed. This is the seed.
Well,
Take
and so at some point, if anybody has questions about the moon versus my own menstrual cycle versus my own creative cycle, I want to talk to individuals about that, because I don't want you to think that just because the moon in the sky says one thing, or just because your body hormones say one thing, you're supposed to be doing it a certain way. My intention for this is so that you begin to look at your life and your creative process through this lens of these 4 phases, so you can recognize your own, like, when do I do this? How does this work? Men have these same hormonal rises as women do. They're just on a 24-hour cycle, and women are on a 28-ish day cycle. Okay, so men go through this sort of thing. It's, their flux is like this. They're like woo-hoo-hoo, and we're like woo. And if we really want to ride the roller coaster, then we actually have to be willing to go up, and we have to be willing to come down. Okay, instead of just trying. And this is, we're living in a world that really says the masculine is the right way. And so women have been trying to sort of be consistent and saying, like, that is the right way to be. And instead, the flux is actually going to serve us women much better, but we just have to learn how to come down. And the new moon, and in the community, I'm going to share just a chart that says like what the moon and the menstrual and the seasonal and the creative, all of that together. I'll put that all there so I don't have to spend the whole time talking about it. Essentially, let's just talk about the moon for this conversation. So the new moon it's dark. There's no light to see. And so the only thing you should be seeing is internal. Okay. This is where you're dreaming. You're seeing with your eyes closed. Okay. This is where you're seeing the stuff that hasn't yet actually happened. And this is my dog, and she really likes to attend all of these workshops.
My favorite thing is seeing with my eyes closed. Yeah, enacting in the chakra system, that third eye, where you can really, if you exercise this, you can become so much more creative. It's not as hard to get your chapters, your visions, your dialogues onto the page. So yes, new moon, seeing with your eyes closed. Let's do it. Love you, dog.
Yeah, she really, really wants to be here with us. So the new moon phase involves rest. It involves slowing the fuck down. Okay. And I love this phase in its theory, but I want to be honest with you. I feel like I'm being punished when I try to practice
Mhm.
this slowing down.
And you are.
Okay. Because when
Sorry, like our
well,
culture is punishing you.
I try to stay offline. Okay. Because I'm not slowing down if I'm constantly ingesting a million pieces of information. I'm not slowing down if I've got a party to go to. I'm not slowing. I mean, if people did that anymore, but like, I'm not slowing down even if I'm agreeing to show up on a webinar. That's not the week for that, baby. Like, this is my time for me. Just full disclosure, I'm ovulating. So this is the time for me to like get up and shine, right? But I've started to put that lens on everything and not expect myself to be one thing when I'm really in all other ways something completely different. And that takes out all of that energy where I used to get to beat myself up. Okay. But the slowing down is really challenging for me. And I loved the question you posted in the group, like, which one of these do you struggle with the most?
Mm-hmm.
Because the dreaming comes easy when we slow down,
Mm-hmm.
when we are resting, when we've cleared the space. The dreaming is just right there, always under the surface. But if you're busy and you're trying to do a million things, you're not going to hear it. There's this constant like whisper of inspiration that's just waiting for you to be able to hear it. But we have to create that space for ourselves so that we can be like, oh, that's an interesting idea. And then not, again, this is the other part that drives me batshit crazy, not jump right into doing it right away. Like, I have an idea, I'm going to finish this week. No, I'm going to hold on to it. I am going to let it simmer. I'm going to see what happens with it. I'm going to watch it and play with it for a couple of days. Okay, this is it. It's just a couple of days. Don't wait forever. I'm all about getting women to accelerate their progress and movement. But what we have been doing is idea action, and we burn out that way. And then the thing that we create when we act like that isn't as good as we wanted it to be. And then we get to beat ourselves up for a whole other cycle or however long. So the new moon, and I want to talk about this and the challenge for everyone so that everyone who watches this live with us, thank you for being here, ladies.
And with the questions at the end.
And everyone who watches the replay actually has something really pretty tangible to walk away with. So if you're familiar with the concept of flow, it's like when you're in the zone, right? And flow can come in writing, flow can come in cooking, it can come in painting, it can come from sweeping the floor, it can come from any activity. But I want you to be thinking about these 4 phases and that finding flow in each phase in a different way. Okay. So in the new moon phase, in this resting, dreaming phase, what activity for you is where you can find your flow? Okay. Maybe it's making soup. Maybe it's in afternoon journaling or just lying in a hammock, because we're in Colombia and we roll like that. But I challenge each of you as I'm talking to be thinking about what kind of activity in this energetic space works for me, so that when you walk out today, you have 4 activities that you can be like, I'm going to insert this into this phase so that I've given myself this opportunity to get into the zone. But they're going to be different, right? How you're in flow in a resting, dreaming energy is very different than how you're going to be in flow at the full moon when you're just writing the damn thing. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. And I think that's great. There have been I've been working with different women who when you get really nervous or anxious, or you feel like you're on stage when you're even writing the page, one of my favorite activities, especially if I'm working to deadline, which sometimes produces even more anxiety. If you can get into one of those flow activities, for some people it's driving, for some people it's cooking. Right. For me, it's doing my coffee shop walks where I get out and kind of have my own little travel experience because I'm an expat. But if you can take a notebook with you, so do not sit in front of your laptop or wherever you're writing, but rather make
Yeah.
a cake and have a notebook on the counter and
Yeah.
no guilt about not putting ideas down. That actually, that's such a great activity. And also, may I say, it's what the world needs right now.
Yeah.
Because so I'm just thinking about what you're saying about intuition and about seeing with your eyes closed. It's so funny, but there are many people who don't believe they have intuition. And of course, that's because we're going so quickly. And
Yeah.
so we aren't able to hear the whisper. I will never forget, and this is the last metaphor, and then I'm going to give it back to you for the next phase. I can't wait to see how this blossoms into the waxing moon. But I remember my husband and I were in the rainforest and we were on this walk, and we were, we saw a toucan and we saw these different things. And there were these two people who were just walking really fast. And I remember overhearing them in English, and they're like, I don't see any animals. Do you see any animals? And it's just like, well, you're power walking in the woods. You're not going to see any animals. And the fact is that it's not that they're not right there. We saw a sloth. We saw so many amazing animals. This was in Costa Rica. But they weren't in cages where we could, here is
Right.
the tiger.
Somebody's put it in this box for you.
Here.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's so funny how I guess I just wanted to bring that up because it's so natural. The animals are there. It's not an animal-less rainforest, but if you get used to really enjoying and taking it slow and starting to notice those whispers and recognizing even the butterflies and all those, everything is so much more rich. So don't move straight into action. Slow down your power walk. So how does this blossom in? Yeah, it is.
So
it's
hard.
a huge practice. My husband had to pull me down by the ponytail. He's like, Gringa, slow down. So yeah, and it is very cultural.
Yeah.
For all cultures, though. Even
I would say, if this concept is new to you, the first time or a couple times around, you're going to hate me. And that's okay. I'll take it. Send all of your frustration towards me, but stick with it and sit with how uncomfortable it is to not be doing. Okay. Just because, so this is a distinction that I really like to make, the difference between familiar and comfortable. And we're usually just comfortable when we're in a familiar context. So if slowing down and actually maybe even not having something scheduled, not having anything scheduled for a day feels really weird, that's a good thing. Okay. That already means you're flexing. So you're out of your ordinary context. You're going to be observing things at a heightened awareness because you're uncomfortable. Don't change it just because you're uncomfortable. Recognize that it's just unfamiliar. You're not actually going to die or go broke or any of the weird things or miss a Facebook post. You're going to be okay. But you're going to feel the change of energy. You're going to feel the change of pace, and that can feel really uncomfortable. So sit with that. And it may end up being very useful for when you're trying to describe someone else's discomfort because you will have just been there. Whatever it is, I would even say, challenge you maybe not to have the notebook and just listen. Because as soon as you have a pen in your hand and you're writing things down, then it's like, oh, I'm working. Oh, now I'm in the zone. I'm like, I know how to do this part. We, as modern humans, have figured out how to doing, right? Doing, we got. The not doing, for most of us, requires a little bit of flexing. So a couple of days, the new moon is one day, and I like the moon even more sometimes than our own menstrual cycles, because I can tell you 6 years from now in May when the new moon is, because it's pretty reliable. Whereas our own cycles are a little bit wonky, and everyone, when I tell people I'm taking days off for my cycle, they're like, how can you do that? My period never shows up on time. And I'm like, I know, mine doesn't either. But I've claimed today, 32 days from now, that I am not showing up on the internet. And if that freaks you out, that's okay. So take some time, okay? And sit with the discomfort of it. Then the waxing moon is when the moon begins to fill. Okay. And I want you to think about this like your own energy. The moon, when I look into the moon in the sky, I, I'm like, okay, that is my actual energetic cup. If I can't see it, it's empty and I need to pull back. And the more every day, it's a little bit fuller through the waxing phase. Okay, we're going to get a little bit more energy. We're going to have a little bit more enthusiasm. This is the planning phase. Whatever whispers and ideas and things that maybe jumped out at you or started to crawl in the earlier stage, this is when you say, like, okay, I see you. Let's create some structure. I'm still not writing. And this, again, really hard. 80% of writing, this is the thing that I say all the time, 80% of writing is not writing. Okay, so what the hell is it? It's resting and dreaming. It's planning and building the structures. The next phase, we'll get into the writing. So the planning phase is when I will play with ideas. What's this thing called? Does it have chapters? What is it? Is it a book? Is it an article? What is it? And then what shape? Give it like a skeleton. Okay, I think of it like a skeleton. If, say, let's just use the example of a book. I've got an idea for a book. Maybe working title this. Here are the various parts of this book. Okay, characters or themes or whatever. Mind mapping is really good at this stage. Draw a circle in the middle of your page, and it's just like this. Okay, this is what I'm working on. And then you just draw like tendril, not straight lines, but vines. Okay, what are the different things growing out of this main idea? What are the sub ideas? And each one of those sub ideas or characters or plot lines, or, you know, I do a lot of nonfiction writing. So like topic, subtopic, 3 example points, 3 quotes, and so on from, and it just like blooms. I love that you used how this blooms, because a mind map takes your idea and it blooms. Okay. When you can bloom it out into circles, and I'm going to share actually later this week in my community where I walk a woman through this. She's like, I just don't know where to start. I have all these ideas. I actually do a mind map with her. And so we get one, usually a big piece of paper with colors, and I steal my daughter's markers and we go like mind map, beautiful. There's your whole project on one piece of paper. And it is the structure for you later on when you have that energy and you're like, oh, I want to write something. What do I want to write? You look at the mind map, you grab one thing and you write it. That way we don't have to be linear. We don't have to be consistent. You don't have to write your book from beginning to end. You write what you want to write today because you've got it all laid out, and you're not going to lose parts of things because it's all laid out for you. This is also my very like masculine. If any part of you is a little OCD, you're going to love this phase, because it's, you mind map and then you can linear it out. Okay. Like I think the order should be in this way. And here's the sub things, and you can really like outline the whole piece. This is also where, when I'm on my game, but I will admit that half the time I'm not, I'll just open a folder on, like I'll open a file on my Google Drive and then forget what I called it and can't find it. This is when I should be making folders. Here's the folder for this whole project. Here's the whole folder for this part of the project. So when I'm ready, I'm going to go to the right place and be able to find it again. I was doing this in the middle of the night last night. And it's amazingly helpful, because then it's structured and I'm not going to lose it. And I'm not going to spend any of my energetic mental capacity on remembering when I wrote it, where I saved it, which Google Drive folder I put it in. Like, it's just there. I know where it is. It's easy. And this is also when you can look at the week ahead and say, I'm going to block out some time, because then is when I'm actually going to want to do this writing. But this is you sort of providing, this is the masculine energy, providing and protecting your creative space. You build the structures, you organize it, you block out some times on your calendar based on when it works, based on what your own creative rhythm is. Some people love to write at 3 o'clock in the morning. Some people love to write at 9 a.m. Whatever, you know, your rhythm. So like claim some times, set them aside ahead of time, so it's not you find yourself there with all this energy and you're like, oh, I have a dentist appointment. No, you don't. You have a writing date with yourself, right? So this is that phase. The waxing phase is you building the system so that you can be successful. This is just the structure of success. When I jump over this phase and start writing, then I'm writing, but I'm all over the place. And then I have to spend time later trying to put it back together, or mental energy just trying to remember who I am and where I put myself. And that detracts from the actual focus that I can give the project itself. Questions about this phase before we move on to the next one? From Emily, and then I do want to leave some time at the end for everybody's questions. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So yes, kind of questions and comments. One thing I love about this, and you can also type in questions if you want. This might be a great way to run it. If you want to type, if you have any questions right away, just type them in and then I'll ask them. But one thing I love about this phase with the waxing moon is flexible structure. Going, I'm just going to keep this flower metaphor throughout, where if you have a structure, you're making progress, and then that feeds into flow. It's really important for momentum. However, one thing I love about sketching out the first structure of things is I know it's going to change as I go. And so when you do that color sheet, you have something to give you the structure so that you're making progress, where to go. You don't have to be linear, which is extremely important. I definitely do that. Because I have that structure, I then ironically have the freedom to be able to choose what I want to do at any time. I can start at the end if I want to. And then
it evolves
intuitively from there.
It actually really evolves my thinking. And I've witnessed this. Once you see it sort of, I think it's going to look like this, then you can look at it and be like, that doesn't really work. I'm going to scribble this out and change it. I used to have the idea and jump into writing, right? And I would just jump into wherever I was. And that it didn't actually work as a strategy over the long term, because I missed this fundamental step of actually it's another layer of sort of thinking an idea through. It's massaging your inspiration to get a lot more clarity. And then once you have that clarity, and I use this example, so the masculine energy, provide and protect, is holding this space so that the feminine energy, when the writing time comes, can just flow. And she doesn't have to be watching her back, and she doesn't have to be worrying about where the pieces are, and she doesn't have to have any other distractions. She can just be, right? She can just let the first draft out without trying to edit it before it's come out, trying to remember what happens next. All of that stuff drains that energy, and it distracts the flow of things. And so this phase of sort of sketching it out lets you answer a lot of those questions, so you don't have to think about them later. And that just, again, it's clearing the deck.
And I know probably everybody in this room right now and everybody watching, there are phases. And as a book coach, this has been such an important part of the work I do, is honestly that short term, all right, let's get these wins through and make sure that the book is done by this time, or be hard on ourselves for this or that. There are certain things in life you can do that with. I think there are many business coaches who work more like that. Like, you're going to have me for 6 weeks. We're going to get this specific project done, and there you are. But I've never worked like that, just because I know the people I work with and have worked with, things happen during the span of a book. And so this is giving us so much wisdom of how to handle a natural creative cycle and go from phase to phase. When you have that skeleton, it's okay. Life happens. And when it's something as big and important as a book, something that most people don't finish, there's no reason to whip yourself all the way through it. That would be crazy. That would be sadistic. And so now
we live in that rigid world, right?
And
we still have deadlines.
Writing books don't really fit into that rigid world. Yeah.
They don't, but with this four phase process, you can say, oh, I need another round of this phase, right? I actually, and I can look at my calendar and I know I've even like just put the moon into my Google Calendar. So when I'm planning anything, I sort of know where it is, even if it's like 6 months out. I can say, oh, I know where that energy is gonna be. And so it for me, it really allows for me to be creative inside a very deadliney, like, what are you doing Tuesday at 7, like, world. It allows for that space. And so it I don't have to like throw my calendar out and like move to a cabin in the woods and get rid of my internet, although I
In
dream of
order to
that
be
sometimes.
creative.
Yeah, like I don't have to do that extreme thing. I can say, here's the cycle I'm going to work in, and I'm going to let you talk for a second because somebody's selling mangoes in front of my house really loudly with an ant.
Okay. Well, actually, and the thing is, I'm going to go. I'd love to ask about the next phase because now we're getting into we're in the full moon. So this is the part where we really go for it. I live in Colombia too. People are selling avocados outside my house all the time with their bullhorns. Welcome. Hopefully, this will give you some of that travel feel that you haven't been able to have. So
Yeah.
go for it. Yes.
Okay. So when most people think about writing, this is the phase that they're like, oh, yeah, this. Okay. The full moon is when we have the most energy. Remember, our moon, I just think of it as your energetic cup. And when that moon is full, you are shining. This is the reason there's like full moon parties in Thailand. There's like light. People want to be around each other. It's all about communication. It's all about engagement. This energy is a high energy time. This matches your ovulation if you're menstruating on any sort of cycle. This is where you're like, oh, I've got some energy over here. And I was saying this to Emily earlier. I slept for 2 hours last night. And before I knew my own rhythm, I would have spent all of those waking hours being like, I should be asleep. I should be asleep. There's something wrong with me. I should be asleep. And I'm like, oh, I'm awake because I'm ovulating. And here's this energy. And my body wants to create. Okay, this is where the menstrual cycle and the moon cycle and the creative cycle are the same. Okay, ovulation, your body is like, oh, let's make a baby.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not having sex, so I'm not making a baby. What am I going to make? Right? I have all of this make energy. And so I recognize that. And about twice a month, sometimes it's like 2 or 3 nights in a row, either with my ovulation or the full moon, or sometimes I get a double dose because I'm not in sync. I'll be up most of the night because I'm just overflowing with ideas and thoughts and energy. And instead of trying to shut that down and be hard on myself and say, like, what did I do wrong today that keeps me up all night? I'm just like, I'm up, I'm doing it. So I had like a whole 5-hour work session last night, had an extra day added to my week, made so much progress in a lot of things. And I'm not gonna beat myself up about that high energy thing. I'm just gonna
Mm-hmm.
go with it and recognize it. I am gonna take a nap this afternoon because I'm not a crazy person, but I I recognize that that is just part of my cycle. Okay. And when we start observing ourselves, so there's phases that we all, and these are natural rules that we all operate in and under, but for the most part, we're overlooking this. And so we're not seeing our lives through this lens. But when you start looking, you will see your exact expression. And it might be different than mine. Okay. On the day you're ovulating, you might get to sleep like a rock star. And maybe I'm a tiny bit envious, but at the same time, I got so much shit done last night. I am amazed, right? I shifted a whole bunch of things and that progress was amazing. I wouldn't trade that for those hours of sleep for anything. So this is the doing. Okay. This is in the creative process and the writing process. This is where it flows. And so the course that I'm going to be teaching, I'm going to talk about it for a second, is we're going to spend the whole month going through these phases, practicing this stuff all in depth, because it's incredible. Again, Emily, we don't have to smash it out because we're not machines. However, My true story is when I was living this and practicing this rhythm, I wrote this book in 4 days in a long
Wow.
weekend
Oh
as a
my
single parent.
goodness.
This book fucking poured out of me in 4 days because I had spent a week resting. I had spent a week planning. I knew what I wanted to talk about. I sketched it out. I was like, these are all the different things that I want to talk about. It was all structured. And then I was just like, oh my God, I can't stop typing. I can't, like, I don't want to sleep because I think the first draft was like 35,000 words. Okay. In a long weekend. My daughter
Wow.
was literally like
Congratulations.
asleep next to me. Thank you. And granted, it's not done, and we'll talk about, the next phase, but it can pour out of you, and you can't edit a book that's in your head. You can't publish a book that's in your heart. Like, it has to get out of you somehow. And so this process, instead of trying to squeeze it out, it's looking at the world around you and saying, oh, okay, let me be in the phase that I'm in. Okay. So I want to bring it back to flow because we talked
Mhm.
about what maybe your potential new moon flow activity would be. I love planning. Okay. When I love to lay it out. I love the mind mapping. I love the outlining. I love scheduling. I love making Google Docs. I don't know why, but I do. That is my flow zone. Okay. Um, and maybe just taking 20 minutes and blocking out some writing things, you're gonna like, ooh, that was fun. I did that. I showed up for my writing and creative process. That's my thing. In the new moon phase, your flow doesn't have to be a writing thing. You can go to a dance party, even if it's a socially distanced, all alone in your house dance party. You can do whatever the high energy thing is, sort of to fuel the fire. Your flow activity does not have to be sit down and write. I'm
I
dyslexic. And so sometimes, like, sitting down and actually writing and like staring at the screen and doing this is not how it flows for me. And so one of my books, the other book, half was just written by talking to my Google Doc because there's like a voice to text thing. And so I just riffed at my computer. I just walked around my house and I talked. I talked my book out. And that was a really different change because, again, if you have a lot of energy, sitting down and typing maybe isn't your thing and it feels contrary to your actual energy state. So I had my outline. I knew what chapter I was going to talk about. I knew what, like, main points even in my chapter I wanted to talk about. And then I just talked
Mhm.
and I had a
That's
chapter. It was
yeah.
amazing.
You have given us so many gems here, and one thing I really want to pull out is in this phase, in this full moon phase, not working against yourself. I think it comes out in talking out your book. If that's how the energy is flowing, ride that wave. Don't beat yourself up because why can't I sit down? There's so many times I've worked with people where I'm like, you know what, talk it out, get it
Mm-hmm.
transcribed, edit that
Yeah,
document, and that speeds
exactly.
up the process so
Yeah,
much. My friend
yeah,
Natalie is going to come out with a book that basically she had her podcasts transcribed
yeah,
and then
exactly.
edited from there. It was
Yeah.
wonderful. And then also the middle of the night stuff, I think I want to take that idea and one step further. So I've dealt with anxiety multiple times in my life, and one thing that I think so many of us are familiar with is waking up in the middle of the night, not with productivity, but anxiety. And the
Mm-hmm.
fun thing is, or at least this is what I've done with my own practice. This is what I've experienced where I will wake up worrying about something. I've had similar experiences where when I can accept that I'm not going to sleep, I put on my Eckhart
Yeah.
Tolle, I'm in the now, I'm not disagreeing with the moment, I'm awake when I'm supposed to be asleep, and that's cool. I've had short stories, the structure of
Yeah.
short stories, dialogues for short stories come out so quickly. And so I think that's what's so wonderful about really this whole program that you're putting forth here is that we can see how culturally we think, oh my goodness. And I'm going to give it back to you because I don't have my
Yep.
table. But I think when you can turn the moment inside out and
Yeah.
answer with a yes to the moment, then you're gonna go. Okay, I'm gonna do an
Well,
emergency
and the
cable
other
rec.
thing about the middle of the night is, you know, it's called the witching hour. Like 2 o'clock in the morning is called the witching hour. That has been an old phrase for so long. If you're into the spiritual stuff, it's where they say like the veil between the conscious and the unconscious is the thinnest, right?
Yes.
That is your connection with spirit, with the, you know, with the universe. If there's messages that are coming through, if everyone around you for 5,000 miles is asleep, the whole energy of your part of the planet gets quiet. So you can really, really hear what's going on. And when you have that energy, both to hear what's going on, and then this is the time to take that action. Okay. So I was up until midnight and then I woke up at 2 and it was, oh shit, my publishing company has just signed 6 books. I've been micromanaging and doing all of this myself. I have not had the important money conversations with some of my clients, so I don't have the money to pay the people that I've hired to do the stuff. I'm about to lose my absolute mind because we're in Colombia and my daughter's still not in school. So in the middle of the night, I changed my schedule on Calendly. I invoiced a couple of people. I had some really important first money conversations with people. And now I know money's coming in. I reached out to 2 people who I'm like, I think you should take over formatting because I don't need to take over formatting. Let's like get these things in play. And if I had waited with any of that stuff in the middle of the night, trying to like shush all of that, I would have just been miserable. And like you said, that's if you're awake in the middle of the night, especially in that like ovulation or full moon energy, just do it. Get the thing done. I did have this moment. I was like, I hope everyone has their phone turned off because it's like now it's 3:30 in the morning. I hope you have your ringer turned off because I'm messaging you some important stuff. But you know what? If you didn't turn off your ringer, that's on you. I am not waiting with this stuff because this is really important. And it shifted my energy so importantly. I had been resisting some really powerful money conversations. Now money's coming in. Now people are taking on different responsibilities. I know that I've cleared my afternoon so I can be with my 6-year-old daughter. I can now I feel like, yes, I can publish these 6 books. That's great because I just like shifted the way I did things. And whether it's in your business, because business is creative. Anyone who tells you business is not a creative act has never done it or is doing it backwards. It's in writing, it's in everything about how we live our lives. And I can really show up. And this is what I was talking about earlier, that the productivity that comes in this phase when you rest. I'm not going to tell you that the full moon is going to be amazing for you if you have not rested. I call it priming the pump. You are not going to get your money's worth from the full moon energy if you have not. So the moon is this energetic container. But if you do not take the downtime, it is like a sieve. Okay. Have you ever tried to make soup in a sieve? You put all the ingredients in, you've done all the things, but there's nothing in there because it's all drained out the bottom. Okay. And the resting of the new moon phase is patching all those holes, creating that energetic container so that you can do the thing. I'm mindful of time, so I want to get us to the waning
Let's do
phase.
the next phase. Exactly. Yes. Oh my goodness. Thank you for hanging out with us. This is going. So let's go to the waning moon and then talk about the program.
Yeah, absolutely. So the waning moon is, let me talk about this in terms of hormones. Okay. When we're menstruating, we're not sort of really wanting to take on the world. We want to hang out. That's the new moon. Okay. We are internal. We are releasing, quite literally, releasing some old stuff, clearing some space for something else to grow. Okay. This is clearing space for something to grow. Then the waxing moon is when our energy is rising and we're starting to be a little bit sassy and we're like looking around and like, ooh, what's out there? What's out there? We're also hormonally really, really tolerant. And the female human tolerance lasts for 14 days, just long enough to ovulate. So somebody has to be cute and attractive and tolerable for 14 days, just evolutionarily speaking, so that they can stick around long enough to impregnate us when we're ovulating. And then all of a sudden, as soon as we're done ovulating, whether we got laid or not, all of a sudden we're like, oh, I don't like everything as much. And then I become a little bit more discerning. Let's just call it discerning. And that happens for another 10 days or so. This is a perfect time to go back and look at what you wrote so you can sort of shake out, oh, I like this. Nope, this is just total hog swallow. And next, but it's not this emotional thing of like, oh, but it's mine. No, it's just like, nope, we're very crystal clear. And so the waning moon, when the moon is pulling back its energy, is a perfect time to be editing and revising your work. Okay, take 3 or 4 days, look at what just burst out of you, and winnow, hone it, pull stuff out, cross stuff off. This is a great red marker time, and just throw a lot of it away. Margaret Atwood, I love in her masterclass, she says, the trash can is your best friend. The trash can is the writer's best friend, but you can't throw something away if you didn't, and this is why all the phases go together. You can't throw something away that didn't get it out onto the page in the first place, right? You have to have the full moon phase preceded by the planning phase, preceded by the resting phase, so that this wonderful hormonal and energetic, like, oh, let's sort through this, let's get rid of some of this stuff. So you're left with the nuggets, okay? You're left with the gold. You're left with what really shines, because you're just, I mean, judgmental in the best way, right? You are absolutely, I don't like that. Done, gone, instead of agonizing about it. And then you repeat, okay? So it really is 5 steps. It's the 4 phases plus just repeat, because the power of these phases comes with repetition, and they come with more familiarity, okay? You won't be any more comfortable in any of these phases. I'm never going to tell you that you're going to be more comfortable. It still could just be totally uncomfortable, but you will be familiar and say, oh, I remember this discomfort. I'm right where I belong. Okay.
And this is how I can use it.
Yes. And that is where the effectiveness comes in. That's where it's really, really potent, because you can just steep in the particular phase. And when your mind is like, oh, I should be doing this, or I should be doing this, you say, no, there's a time for that. There's a phase for that. It's coming, but not right now. This is what we're doing right now. My daughter is 6, and I have a let's do one thing at a time thing going on with her. I need it just as much as she does. It's part of why I say it to her all the time, I think, because I need to hear it the most. So it's do the phase and repeat and repeat and repeat.
Great. So we have a question. Let's open this up to questions. And then I also want to hear about the program. So the first question, Krista, thank you. I'll read it for you, and I'm going to unmute everybody so it can be more of a conversation.
Yeah, and thank you all for
on the
sticking
replay.
around. I love it.
Send me questions. I'm going to we're going to be in the group talking about this for the rest of the week, and so all the information will be there. Okay, awesome.